Welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. We're going to discuss video games today because it's the Steam Summer Sale and it's the Nintendo sale, and all of these things are on sale. And you look through, and I've expressed. There's one phrase that I want to get into, and that's going to be the real focal point of most of this discussion. I figure we can use some distraction from all the politics and all the political news, because, who am I to talk about that? I will say this, and this will be my only thought on this. I will say, in all likelihood, I know that people think that the Roe v. Wade decision is going to galvanize Democrats. I don't think that's true. I think that the Democrats are going to lose the House and the Senate in the fall. I think that they're going to message the wrong way, and I can say this because I interviewed in 2020 for a job in the campaign of a representative doing some management with the campaign, and on the interview I was asked what I would do about messaging, like how would I message to defeat the incumbent who was a multi-term Republican representative in the House of Representatives. I interviewed and I was asked that question, and I said attacking him for his alignment with then President Donald Trump was a losing battle, because we have a sizable contingent of people where I'm from that very much agree with a lot of what Trump espouses, and even we have a lot of QAnon and far right wing nut jobs, and attacking him for that, not a winning battle. Going out and attacking him for that is not a winning battle. What would work is attacking him for what he's done that has hurt people directly. Look at his voting record over the last few years, over the last 6 years he was in office, and needle him on things that directly impact the everyday person here. And I was hung up on mid-interview because the game plan was to attack him for his ties to Trump. And said Democrat challenger got blown out in the general election. So, if there's one thing that the Democrats are not good at, it's messaging, and going into 2022, I don't think that's likely to be fixed. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about something else that is going to impact people more directly. Well, I mean, not more directly, that's the wrong word, but it's going to impact people who listen to this show, and it's going to be a little bit more relaxed. I'm talking about the use of like in genres for video games, and I've talked about this before multiple times. I've talked about my problem with with getting a video game and it being referred to online by fans and by game journalists as other game like, rogue like, and then more recently we have a new one, Stardew-Like, referring to Stardew Valley. I'm a huge Stardew Valley fan, and I think I haven't been exactly subtle about that. I love the game. It's a game I can lose time playing and just sit down and just deal with my farm for a while and just, grow copious amounts of cranberries, because you make a lot of money with cranberries. And I'm looking at this, there's a lot of games coming out now that are farming simulators, and because that's what the game is. It's a farming simulator. Now, Stardew Valley does a lot more than just farming. Stardew Valley also does, what else was there? Like, there's mining, there's exploration aspects, there's romance aspects. It's kind of like a more thorough and more expanded version of Harvest Moon, if anything. So when I read articles and they're like, this is a Stardew-like, as in the game is like Stardew Valley, I find myself confused. Because, number one, Stardew is if we're going to use these naming conventions, Stardew Valley is a a Harvest Moon-like game to begin with, and like the issue is, the thing about Stardew Valley that I think not just me but a good amount of the fans really appreciate is the fact that the game is not a one and done. The game came out in 2016, and it came out for PC, and then it was ported to the PS4 and the Xbox One, and it was ported to the Switch, and I would assume PS5 and Xbox Series X are going to get versions of it, and it's moved on and on from there. What the thing about Stardew Valley that a lot of people appreciate is that while it came out that long ago, it also continues to be supported by the developer, like up until recently. Like, I think now we're getting into the waning edge of its support as Concerned Ape moves into Haunted Chocolatier, the next, his next big game. I think we're going to start seeing it start to wane the support for Stardew Valley, but the game is still getting pretty sizable upgrades, even through 2020 and 2021, where the updates that added in, like the Tropical Islands, like most other games, an update of that size would be paid DLC. You wouldn't get that for free. The 1.5 update would not have been given for free. The update, I want to say the desert was an update too. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I just jumped into the game late and it was included in my base game, but no, it wouldn't have been, because it was included with the community center. So the idea that the islands are this this huge DLC area that would have been a DLC, because it effectively doubles the size of the map, gives you a second, it gives you a second entire farm you can go with. It gives you a you get this whole new area to explore, and basically an entire community center bundle type thing to forage and get new stuff to collect. The movie theater was added in after the fact. I know that for a fact. The remix bundles was added in after the fact. But all these things in any other game by any other developer would have been paid DLC, and hopefully that when it comes time for the Haunted Chocolatier to come out, I hope that this isn't some awakening for the developer to be like, oh shit, I could have charged for all that. But in reality, these things would have all been paid extras that people would have paid money to have, and these were free updates, and not recent free updates, in the same way that you get support for a game for 1 or 2 years after, and you get these things where it's like Spider-Man had all of these cool DLC things that happened with the PS4 version, and then it was $7 here, $7 here, or $10 in each one, or $20 for the full DLC pack, and you get you get all of the City That Never Sleeps, I think was the name of the bundle for all three. But if that's going to happen, and you're going to have these, those expansions were less than, say, the island, where you get the other dungeon, and you get all this other shit, this really cool shit that's all added in, and you can fuck around with, and it's entirely new things and missions and stuff to engage you. And in a world where you don't get free shit like that more often, when I hear a game is Stardew-like, that's what I want it to be referencing. I don't want it to be referencing the fact that I'm paying, that okay, it's a farming simulator. We've been having farming simulators that have piqued imaginations for forever, for as long as there's been gaming. Those have been a thing. I think back, and it's I remember reading Nintendo Power, and keep in mind that she's showing my age, but not in the way more people, usually do. But I remember being in middle school and reading Nintendo Power, and there being the Harvest Moon game coming for the GameCube, and being holy fuck, this seems cool. There's relationships, and you get to grow crops, and there's all these cool things, and it's you gotta make your farm profitable. And you look at all of this stuff, it's fuck you. I don't want a game to be called Stardew-like before it comes out, because for me a game can't be Stardew-like until we've seen it out for a while and we see how the game deals with its continued longevity. And without that longevity, then what's the point of saying that game is any different from any other past farming simulator. Because that's what sets it apart. Without that, it isn't set apart from anything else. I mean, unless you're going to say, like, oh, it's got crafting, it's got, all this other stuff. But at that point, it's like, well, I don't think these other games have that depth to it either. Like, I haven't played many of these other games that are considered, quote, Stardew-like, unquote, but I don't think that they have the same level of gameplay variety that Stardew does. I mean, I would assume so after a certain point, but, like, there needs to be more to it, I think, for a game to get that title. You can't just say this game is like Stardew Valley because it's got similar gameplay mechanics, because the thing, like, there are a million games that did that, but very few. I want to say that, like, Postal 2 is one of the few other games that this far out from release is still getting support from its, from its developers. Because Postal 2 did get that. They had DLC that came out years and years later for that game, that Running Wishes has put out. And they put out Postal 4, I think, now, and that game sucked. But if we're going to sit here and we're going to look at, like, what makes this game different, that's what makes this game different. So, look, at the end of the day, like, it's not going to change anything. One person's screaming into the void on the internet about how the game shouldn't be called Stardew-like unless it hits these other criteria that really aren't there. That set this game so far apart from everything else in the genre. It's not something that's going to change overnight, because I've been saying for years, like, we talk about video gaming as an industry being gatekeepery, and how people like to say that, like, oh, well, no, anyone can jump in and do it, but, like, and I've said this before, this has been the example I've always given, like, science fiction, fantasy, genres of movies and books are very easy to define. Video games, it's harder, because video games, you have to, video games, you have to, it's defined more by how it's played, and some of the more technical aspects. So, to an extent, it is easier to say roguelike than, say, whatever the actual, whatever, like, a more technical name. And like something like 4X for a gameplay genre doesn't explain anything to anyone who doesn't know what it is already. But, like, for roguelike, you can say, what's it called? You could call it a procedurally generated dungeon crawler. And it tells you a lot more without expecting someone to know the game Rogue. And now Souls-like is a thing. Where it's like, I still haven't played Dark Souls, so I can't comment on what it is, but it's an RPG with incredibly difficult bosses. And permadeath, if I remember correctly. But, like, there are so many things that, like, we do blank-like for the genre of the game, and it's like, well, I don't think that's a good way to do this. I don't think calling it blank-like is a fair way to do it, if we're trying to get more people into the genre and into playing the game. And there's a reason why these shooting games and these sports games continue to get support, and it's because it's easy to define what they are. It's easy to look at Call of Duty and be like, oh, that's a first-person shooter. Okay, what's Madden? It's a football game. Like, these games that have these huge support, and it's like, side-scroll fighting and all of these other things, it's like, maybe if we went into these genres and gave them a more, like, a more accessible name, more people would play them. And I know that groups don't want these people playing these games, don't want more new people playing the game, but at the same time, if you don't get more people playing the games, you won't get new games. Like, you can sit here and you can play your, You can sit here and you can play your old games all you want. But at the end of the day, if you want new ones, you need more people playing them. So saying a game is roguelike or Stardew-like doesn't tell anyone anything, especially when we get 5, 10, 15 years down the road, when games will come out. And it's great that this is going to be the legacy for these games, and they're going to get this chance to, to live on past its shelf life and live on past what it's doing by being, being the genre being named after them. And to an extent, there is something to that. There is something to the idea that we could honor these games by naming the genre after them, but at the same time, you have to, define them easier than, oh, it's like this other game that you may not have played, especially the farther out you get from that. Where it's like, we can sit here and we can be like, okay, well, this is like Call of Duty, or this is like, we don't call, like, Destiny wasn't a Call of Duty like. Kingdom Hearts is not a Final Fantasy like, or like, anything like that. It's easy to, if it's easy to discern what it is, and like Yokai Watch wasn't a Pokemon like. It's easy to define. It's easy to look at and be like, it's a monster collection fighter. It is a character-driven RPG. It is, these things make it easier and more accessible for people to find the games. And I think the developers should be reaching out and being like, look, we're going to call it what it is. Like, a Metroidvania means very little to people who don't know what Metroid or Castlevania is. Or what Metroid, more accurately, what Metroid or Castlevania started out as. Because they're different now. The games have changed so much since they were originally released that it's not it's not an accurate way of portraying it. Because if someone says Metroid, it's like, Metroid Prime is what a lot of people think. They don't think of Metroid or Metroid 2 or games like that. They think of the newer versions that millions of people played for the GameCube. So the term Metroidvania doesn't really work as well. What it is it's a open world side scroller, which would be a good way to define it. And these names will keep people, it tells them, what they need to know about the game and what they, how the game is played all at once. Boss Rush, easy. You can point out what it is. I can very easily define what it is and how it works. But, these things need to be adjusted. And I think that the term Stardew-Like, especially, more than any of the others, should probably be retired until a game has been out for a while. Because Stardew Valley did not get its widespread love from just being a farming simulator. Or a farming simulator with other aspects like mining and, fighting things and all this other stuff. It got its attention and it got its, its notoriety because of how much it did with continued support after its release. And the fact that the developer was still involved and still putting out new content 6 years after it came out. 4 years after it came out. And it's like, look, the 1.6 update dropped today, and the 1.6 update is entirely new stuff that has, there's nothing real new in it. It's more of a patch to make modding easier. But still, it's like the game came out, it came out in 2016, so we're talking 6 years ago, and there's a brand new, there's a brand new, one that came out. There's a brand new update, even if it is just for expanded mod support. Like, come on. Like, that is something, it's almost unheard of in this day and age for a company to continue to support the game this far out from release. Especially when there's another game coming down the line that is entirely different. And yeah, there may be some assets used similarly. There may be some, some other things that are in common between Stardew Valley and the Haunted Chocolatier. Fine. Whatever. Say what you will about that, but it doesn't matter. It does not matter. There will be, this game is still being supported because of how big and how great the fan base is. And that's what we should be looking to and pointing to as, this is what makes games like this, is its continued support this far after release. And even so, if we're going to say that a game is going to do that, and we're going to say what was the first to do it, I mean, I think that put Postal 2 as the one in that... I lapsed the Porky Pig there for a second. What the fuck? Like, Postal 2 was probably the first one to really do that far out from release. So yeah. So we'll wrap up there for today. I'm currently on my way to see Elvis, the Baz Luhrmann biopic about Elvis. That's 2.5 hours long for reasons. But I'm going to see that now. Tomorrow I'll be seeing The Black Phone, and hopefully I can sleep after that. But until then, those will both be on Beware of Spoilers. Until our next big news story comes, which I can't say when that'll be because I don't know when the next big news story will come, if there's any movie news coming. Maybe we'll do one this weekend about Lee Wanell doing a movie, what's it called, doing a what's it called movie? A Green Hornet. I keep saying Green Arrow when I tell people a Green Hornet and Kato movie. Maybe that'll be the next story. But, we'll see. I'm not doing another Ezra Miller update. Because, by the end of the month, I think we're going to be in a Waco situation, so I'm not going to go any further on this. My thoughts haven't changed. My thoughts are still, if you've invested, at this point, just can the movie, dump it onto HBO Max, or recast and put Grant in the lead. Just reshoot the entire movie and put Grant in the lead, and just be like, hey, do you want $10 million extra dollars to reshoot a bunch of scenes to, play the Flash in a movie? And then we can watch Stephen Amell freak out because he wants to be in a movie so bad as the Green Arrow. It'll be fun. Unless they're doing that, I don't care about the latest developments of what Ezra Miller is doing, or who he's holding hostage, or if he has children, or if he's, if he's abducted someone, or if he's got guns and bullets lying around his residence, or if he's got too much pot for the state of Vermont, or, I don't care about any of it. I read the Rolling Stone article. There's no more to talk about with that. I'm not saying let him live his life, because something clearly is wrong with that man, or that person. I keep forgetting, I keep misgendering them, but at this point, get rid of, they can't be in this movie. You can't sell a family movie to families and have this person who is doing all of this in the lead. It's not going to track well. It's not a good look, first of all. And second of all, it's just one of those things where it's I wouldn't want this. This is not the person you want playing a superhero. But that's all I'll say on the matter. Because the situation has changed, but at the same time hasn't changed since last we spoke. So, until our next episode, which whenever that may be, which may very well be the police standoff at the Miller compound in Vermont, have a great rest of your week.